Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Hello and good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Apex Racing TV, and welcome back to the 2024 Radical Americas Championship. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Charles Bichelle, and in the virtual production hall we have our old buddy Josh Wilkie. Tonight we're here at Road America for the 6th round of the season. This car at this track always spawns some really enjoyable racing, and I'm sure tonight is going to be no different. The slipstream is always a huge factor when it comes to these Radical SR10 races, and at a fast circuit like this, you ought to imagine what the racing action is going to be like tonight. Now, Charles, of the races that we've done together with this series so far, we haven't been to a total slipstream fest, but tonight we're going to have that. Now, you have a whole lot of experience with the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors. In fact, we just wrapped up that season earlier on this afternoon. That race was very, very hectic, as our producer Josh can attest to, being a part of that race himself. So coming into this race, what are your expectations for the slipstream fest here with the Radical SR10s?
It's going to be massive. This is just one of those tracks that if you get a good car that's got, as these Radicals, got good horsepower, lots of aerodynamic efficiency, you're going to get lots and lots of drafting here. And it's just going to be a matter of just seeing who can hang on to the front of the train and without making any mistakes. I mean, it's a lot of long straightaways. And yeah, it's going to be a fun race because this is one of my favorite tracks, and it's one of the ones that I think is a lot of attention in iRacing overall. And we talked about the race earlier where we were at Watkins Glen, very similar to that, where lots and lots of series come to this track. So it's a driver's favorite, and it's one of those that it gets a lot of usage in lots of different cars during the season. So yeah, it's going to be a good race, and we're going to have some fun with it. I think it's going to be some real battles up front.
And I actually have a little bit of a personal connection with this track and this car as well. So the Radical, back when it was called the Radical Racing Challenge, the official broadcast that we do every single Friday here on Apex Racing TV, that was the first ever broadcasting gig I got here on Apex, and I always like to hammer that point across in my year covering that series. And the second ever broadcast I did here on Apex Racing TV was of the Radical season opener at Road America that season, and despite the fact that I think 22 of the 24 drivers crashed in that race, it was still a very fond memory, and definitely not because it was probably the closest I ever got to getting fired here on Apex Racing TV. But here, the Radical SR10s, you always love the iRacing team working really hard behind the scenes, and they have worked wonders on this car. They've worked with Radical in real life, and they've worked with a community of racers and drivers that love this car and drive it week in and week out. They worked to build this car up and turn it into a weapon. These cars are shockingly quick. You can see this man, Lucas Vieira, the man at the north end of the field at a 159.726. That is a blisteringly quick lap time. These cars are very, very fast, surprisingly fast in the world of iRacing and in the world of real life as well. So, yeah, very nice to see the Radical community grow in the past year ever since I started with this series many, many moons ago. And we're currently in this practice session, about 3 seconds left to go, and we're getting a good idea as to what sort of pace these drivers may expect at this qualifying session we have coming up in just a few moments' time. Another good point to add is the fact these Radicals on cold tires, it is a pain in the butt as we see Tyler Vickery possibly struggling with those cold tires, rounding his way around the second to last corner of turn number 13A. And yeah, we just ran a little bit wide. The cold tires are a real pain in the butt with these cars, and we'll see that be put on full display in this qualifying session. The times that we have in this practice session, which a checkered flag has just come out on, we may be seeing cars a little bit slower in this qualifying session coming up in just a few moments' time, starting right about now. But throughout this season, we have kept tabs on the championship fight, and Charles, it is incredibly close. Would you like to go through the championship points in both the Pro and the AM divisions?
Oh, absolutely. Let's do that right now as we get the qualifying started. Ryan Odo with 108 points, and then we've got a tie for second. Franco Sanchez and Lucas Vieira tied at 107, 1 point behind. So obviously, lots and lots of battling there still at the top end of the board, still very, very tight. John Benelud in fourth, Eric Harmon in fifth, rounds out your top five in the Pro category. We'll roll over to the AM category, and in there we've got Charles Krasik with 81 points, Hunter Reeve 1 point behind in P2. Cedric Ohayan with 78 points, Joel Jacklin 77, and Andy Vogel 75. So 6 points separating the top five in the AM category. So still, once again, lots and lots to play for. Every position is going to matter in this race and in the future races.
Those championship point standings are absolutely insane just to look at, and I think part of the reason as to why that's the case is the topsy-turvy nature of this season so far. Charles, you've been a part of multiple of these broadcasts, 3 so far, all the way back on Sebring at on March the 10th earlier on this year. Then you're a part of the Interlagos broadcast back in April, and the Barber Motorsports, your hometown race, back on May the 12th. With the topsy-turviness has carried on in both the racetrack and some controversial incidents that we've had, and just in terms of the tracks that we've been running on, we kicked the season off all the way back on February the 18th running on Monza without that first chicane. That was a total slipstream fest, very similar to what we're going to be having here this evening. Sebring on the Air National layout, that was an intense race as well. Then we went to some more tight and technical circuits. Watkins Glen on April the 7th, Barber, actually no, it was Interlagos right after that, as we see big slide, and that's a Bantez into the wall coming out of the final corner. Not ideal for the Brazilian to kick off his qualifying session with an incident like that. Hopefully it's just an isolated case coming out of that very tricky final corner. But getting back to the schedule discussion, Barber Motorsports Park was the last round that we had about 3 weeks ago, and in a couple of weeks time we're going to be heading off to the UK at Alton Park, running on the international layout with none of the chicanes as well. So that is going to be intense. The Alton Park races with these Radical SR10s are usually quite hectic, and we'll see that be put on full display in a couple of weeks time. But man, we're in this qualifying session, and these drivers are going to be hauling the mail, trying to get the most they can out of their race cars as we ride on board with Charles Krasik in this qualifying session. Would you like to talk through some of the challenges that these drivers are going to face here tonight, Charles?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just came out of turn 3, so that's the second straightaway. This is probably the longest straightaway on the circuit. The run from turn 3 down into turn 5. There is a corner there, but because these cars are such aerodynamic monsters, it's basically flat as you see them have to way up to get the car turned in for 5. And then you got a very tricky little turn 6, corner 6 there. You're braking over the crest of a hill, and so it's a little bit of little bit of a pain sometimes. You'll miss a braking point and you'll go deep. Coming through 7 and down into turn 8. Pretty straightforward little corner, and then we're going to run into the carousel. So it's basically just about modulating your speed, your throttle input through here, and get the car set, hit the apex, get the run out of the corner, and then we're going to run down through the kink. This is the place where most cars die, especially when you're doing a lot of passing there, as you see them running wide. I believe that is going to be an off track, so that will not count for a lap. And get the run down here into Canada Corner. Lots and lots of places to make mistakes there. You can get too deep in the apex or too far out, and you'll be up in the gravel. And then this is I forget the name of it, but Paddock Hill Bend. Or yeah. So anyway, so then you get the final corner, and then the run back down to the start finish line. Obviously uphill. Slipstream be kicking in here. You might see, if we get a good battle, we'll see a run to the line for the checkered flag, which is what we're going to hope for. Hope for a good race there. And it's, like I said, it's a pretty straightforward lap. There's a couple of tricky corners you have to deal with, but overall, it's just a matter of just hitting your braking points and just keeping your speed appropriate for each corner, and we'll end up having a really good race. See him taking the real wide line there through 5.
I think I saw Ryan Odo running a very similar line during the practice session earlier, so trying to use every single inch available to him. Hey, as they say in the world of racing, if you give a racing driver an inch, he's going to want to take a mile. As Ryan Odo briefly blinks in and out of existence there, possibly being sucked up by a UFO, he is going to try and complete his qualifying laps, as many of these drivers are, and I will say, over 5 minutes into this qualifying session, over halfway through, and these drivers are actually matching the times that they set during the practice session earlier, which is a little bit surprising to me. Usually when it comes to these races, they can't get the tires hooked up and get all the juices flowing in these Radical SR10s in the time they have at their disposal, but here at Road America, it looks like that's being a little bit different. The driver is trying to prove me wrong. Lucas Vieira is currently at the front at a 1:59.664. That is a very good lap time for him. Andy Vocal in P number 2, very good result for the AM driver. We'll see if that sticks. This is Dennerine in the number 244 car. He is rounding his way through the kink, about to head into Canada Corner in just a couple of moments time, which is going to be a fantastic overtaking opportunity when it comes time for the sprint and feature races that we have later on this evening. Carrying a heck of a lot of speed through that corner, then through the kink of turn 13, which is going to be a trouble spot for these drivers as well. He rounds that corner as Odo and Harmon and a whole bunch of other drivers set their first qualifying laps, and around the final corner for Dennerine, we'll see what kind of time he sets. It's fairly close all throughout this field, currently separated by about 3.5 seconds as things stand at the moment. And here's Dennerine, the Canadian. Where does he jump up in this qualifying session? He goes P9. All right, so not the best qualifying time in the world. However, he is in the midst of a frickin' hornet's nest between himself, Jacqueline Fernandez, Reeve, and Krasik. Barely any time separating all those drivers. Are all within the 201.3 to 201.4 range. So that is very close, right out to right, well, just barely inside the top 10.
Yeah, just inside the top 10. It's really remarkable to watch these cars. You know, we're talking about just at the 2-minute barrier per lap, which is really like top end GT3 times. So obviously these cars don't have quite the horsepower that a GT3 car does, but what it lacks in horsepower, it makes up for in saved weight and lots and lots of aerodynamic downforce to make these corners. They're taking these corners very, very hard. So it's just fun to watch these cars go around the track. And I haven't had it spent a lot of time in the SR10. I drove the SR8 quite a bit, and they're just fun cars to drive. So it's going to be fun to watch these guys battle each other for these two races coming up. So as you see them just looks effortless coming around carousel, and it's just like just a little lift there, get the car planted in the apex. And then here's the kink coming up, and you just got to be very, very, it's just, there's one line through there. Everybody wants to try and go too wide. It's just almost impossible. It doesn't matter what car you're driving. And so that'll be one that we'll have to watch out for during the races.
we're getting some more drivers setting their qualifying laps. Ryan Odo, only the second driver to jump into that sub 2 minute barrier. He goes to 1:59.843 as Lucas Vieira jumps up to a 1:59.482. That is an incredibly impressive lap time from the Brazilian. He is our provisional pole sitter with about a minute and a half left to go in this qualifying session. We'll see what Franco Sanchez can do. The driver from Peru is always a standout star in the official races. He jumps up to third, just barely outside of that sub 2 minute barrier. And you can see Lucas Vieira at the end of the pit lane right now. He's in neutral. He's not even in that race car. He is going to be enjoying the view from the sidelines as he sits on the provisional pole right now. And Vieira, he has been a force to be reckoned with all throughout this season. He won last time out in dominant fashion at Barber Motorsports Park. And if it wasn't for some incidents at Interlagos, he would have taken the double there as well. Lucas Vieira, despite the fact it's still very close at the north end of the championship fight, Vieira, he is just the one that we need to keep our eyes on week in and week out.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been pretty dominant the last couple of outings, and looks like he's on pace for tonight as well. But he's got some competition. Odo and Sanchez are just right there with him, along with several others. So the draft will make up for a couple of tenths of pace per lap. So it's going to be interesting to see if maybe some strategy plays into this as well. We talk about it with some of our slower races that we call, where you might be wanting to be setting in second as opposed to first on that last lap to get the last run.
Just gonna have to wait and see how things shake out in this race. A checkered flag has come out in this qualifying session. We're gonna take a look at the starting grid for this 15-minute sprint race that we have right on your front door. It's Lucas Vieira. He's gonna be starting this race at the front in the number 171 car. Ryan Odo, the American, will join him on the front row. That's Franco Sanchez, the Peruvian, in third. Eric Harmon in fourth. Andy Vocal, the top of the AM drivers. He's gonna be starting this race in P5. Rylan Richard in sixth. And we have Meyer Denarine in P number 7, Joel Jacqueline in 8. In P number 9, we have Bruno Abrantes, and that is going to be Adrian Fernandez rounding out your top 10. Hunter Reeve in 11th. Tyler Vickery, who we may have a chat with after this race, he is in P number 12. Cedric Oyahan in 13th. Charles Krasik in 14th. Luis Pires in P15, and Richard McDougall is going to be making up the rear in P16. So that is the starting grid for this race. The sprint is always quite hectic. Hey, there's a reason why they call it the sprint. It is going to be 15 minutes of heart-pumping racing action here from the Radical Americas Championship. These drivers, they don't have to deal with a pit stop. They don't have to deal with any sort of gimmicks or anything like that. It is just a 15-minute bare-knuckle fist fight from start to finish. Standing starts as well in the series. Usually we're used to some rolling starts here on Apex Racing TV, but as is the case with the official series with the Radicals and this one as well, standing starts are implemented. It is so important, especially at a track like this with some slanting and some elevation changes on that start-finish straightaway and on the starting grid to try and manage that wheel spin. We saw this at Interlagos a few weeks ago. These drivers trying to get that wheel spin right. Some get it right, others get it terribly, terribly wrong. We're waiting for the lights to go out, and after that, the drivers are going to be on their way. It's a very good start for Vieira, a terrible start for Ryan Odo. He may be dropping out of the podium positions. Vieira is going to be leading them. Heading into turn number 1, Odo, that was an absolutely dreadful start. He's now following behind Harmon, who's going to try and sweep around the outside. Heading into turn number 2, not close enough. Going through the first opening corners to start off this lap, and now Ryan Odo looking to try and fight back. He must be having some major connection issues because we're still seeing him blinking, and that's another car going farther off the track. Not sure who that was. Heading into turn number 3, we already have a casualty. That may have been Fernandez. Yes, it is Fernandez. The AM driver in the number 127 car has made a big mistake early on and is massively on the back foot.
Yeah, it's a tough way to start. He's going to lose some time, obviously. Oh, as we see 2 cars, that's the 22 of Brontes, and I didn't catch the other car. We'll see him coming back on, but obviously, oh wow, the other car way wide back there. I think that's McDougall. So had several cars off the track there in turn 5. Such a hard braking point, downhill, hard left-hand turn. It's very difficult to get that right every time, especially with cold tires and cold brakes. And you see the results of that. So we've got a couple of cars that have fallen to the back.
Not an ideal start for them, and that's a big crash coming out of turn number 8. Who is that? That's Tyler Vickery, who I thought was briefly in the air. That was a major hit coming out of turn number 8. We're going to have to take a look at a replay to see what in the world happened to the driver of the number 24 car, and you can see the suspension damage as he gets a big whack from McDougal, who just passed him heading through the carousel. That was an ugly, ugly sight, and we'll definitely have to try and load up that replay to see what the heck happened there. Vieira, meanwhile, he is continuing to pull away as he's rounding his way around the second to last corner. At the end of lap number 1, Vieira is going to be leading about a second and a half over himself and Sanchez in P number 2. And this is what happened to Tyler Vickery, trying to go move down the inside into turn number 8. Ran very, very wide off into the gravel. And we'll see what happened here. I think he may have been hit once he spins across the track. And oh, that's a big hit. That was a Brantez that just gave him a huge hit from the back. And that's just lap 1, big schmozzles you expect at a track like this with big speed and cars that can't really negotiate too well, especially on cold tires. Tough start for a lot of these drivers. Many drivers taken out on lap 1.
Yeah, that's a tough start. We said Vickery, he's already coming into the pits, obviously with a lot of damage, and that's like that could have been avoidable. You know, off the track, like a pretty easy rejoin. Came back on, got a little squirrely on the curbs, maybe caused him to just lift a little bit more, and maybe somebody, you know, the cars behind weren't expecting it, and definitely could have, looked like it could have been avoided, but, you know, we'll give everybody the benefit of the doubt as we see Vickery coming through turn 7, down the hill, stays to the inside, going to try and make that move, late break, takes the inside there, floats to the outside, too much speed, comes back onto the track. Yeah, just gets a little loose, back on throttle on the curbs, and just had to check up a little bit, and just the cars behind weren't expecting it.
A really rough start for a whole lot of these drivers. We saw the major drivers running wide and making contact heading through turn number 5. That is a horrible braking zone in these Radical SR10s. The braking is so difficult because there's a razor thin margin of error. If you go a little bit over that, you're going to be locking up and running incredibly deep into whatever corner it is. We've got an awesome fight between Sanchez and Odo in P2 and P3. This is definitely going to heat up between now and the end of this. We're about 4 minutes in to this race, about to start lap 3 in just a couple of moments time, and as Vieira continues to pull away with that gap between himself and Sanchez, covering about 2 seconds now, it's closing up to that for darn sure. Vieira is going to be pulling away as Sanchez and Odo may start to battle. Odo trying to get the move done down the inside, heading into turn number 1. They're going to be side by side, and as Vieira sets the fastest lap of the race, Odo moves his way back into P number 2. So the driver that had a terrible getaway at the very beginning of this race has put on some damage control, and now he may try and size up, closing that gap between himself and Vieira. He is a very fast Radical SR10 driver, but he's got the likes of Sanchez and Harmon right behind, trying to keep him on his toes.
Yeah, he did not get a great start, and he is trying to close the gap, and looks like they're starting to make up a little bit, and it looked like the leapfrog actually was helping them make up the time, but then I think Odo said, "No, what? I just want to stay in second, and not practice the leapfrogging down the straightaways if I don't have to." But I think it ends up. I think that's going to be faster. But it's you know, it's sometimes it's hard to get that into a racer's head. It's like, yeah, you know, we might can leapfrog down and make up a couple of tenths per corner or down a straightaway. But then sometimes it's like, you know what, I'm just content here to stay in front of this group, and we'll see if I can catch them on my own. And so we'll see if that group can make up it. We got another car off there as well. Could not tell who that was.
That may have been Reeve, and we're going to take a quick look at a little replay of what happened to Vocal earlier on in this race. This was on lap number 1 heading into turn number 5, and this was contact between himself and Adrian Fernandez.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, my apologies. That was not the incident involving Adrian Fernandez. That was himself and a Brantez heading into turn number 5. And I think Fernandez was one of the drivers that ran wide in the aftermath of all of that. That was a big moment for a lot of those drivers. A whole lot of stuff kicking off around that same time. This track, very, very tricky, and no matter what kind of car you're driving around it could be a Spec Racer Ford, it could be a Radical SR10. You still have to deal with the exact same challenges, and sadly on lap number 1, at the very beginning of tonight's festivities here from the Radical Americas Championship, some drivers getting bit by that bullet at the very start.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason we saw Odo in qualifying go all the way outside of the curbs there going into 5. I think it's just a very difficult place to try and brake with these cars. It look like they have a tendency to kind of lock up down through there. Especially if you're braking just on the point, not giving yourself a little extra room, and just getting lockups with the brakes and the tires. And so just better just stay off the curb completely and just take them wide and brake there, as we see him doing it again. That's exactly what we were just talking about. Yeah, it seems like he can brake out there much easier than he can with a normal line where you would see the GT3s actually braking on top of those curbs.
Oh, this is a dogfight between Ryan Odo and Franco Sanchez. They're side by side ever since they're heading into turn number 1 at the very beginning of this lap. These two trading blows are some of the best Radical SR10 drivers there are in the entirety of iRacing. They're trading blows in this 15-minute sprint race. They've single-filed out heading through the second half of this lap now, heading through the carousel as we speak. But that was a very intense fight between the two of them, and it's allowed Odo to slot his way back into P number 2. Sanchez still in P3, and Eric Harmon running in 4th. These three have actually broken away. They're running effectively in no man's land, and we may see their gap between themselves and Vieira continue to grow as Sanchez looking to get that move done down the inside, heading into Canada corner. It's going to be tight, it's going to be bold, it's going to be nearly contact as they head through the corner. Odo sticks it around the outside and holds it off beautifully. That was a beautifully executed maneuver from Ryan Odo to remain in P number 2. However, defending that kind of stuff, it's only a matter of when, not if. The slipstream is going to allow your competitors to get by yet again. They're going on to the start finish straight away. 8 minutes in, we're about to start lap number 5, and you can see Odo weaving his way around the racetrack, trying desperately to break that draft, and even dipped a wheel off into the dirt there as he came down the start finish straight away to begin lap number 5. Sanchez has a massive turn of speed. He's going to try and get that move done down the inside on Odo. It looks fairly clean. Does he keep it within the boundaries of the racing circuit? Yes, he does. Only a small little puff of dirt. He ran a little tiny bit wide, did Franco Sanchez, but he still held off that move and slid his way back into second place. But still not over. Odo is going to have that fantastic run. They're going to be side by side going down this back straightaway, heading their way, careening their way into turn number 5. Who is going to prevail? And Odo going with that odd line yet again, running all 4 wheels off the circuit and sweeping around the outside. And here is a whole lot of speed out of turn number 5, even with dipping 2 wheels off into the dirt on corner exit. Ryan Odo, using that interesting line of his, is just swooping around and carrying probably about 20 more miles an hour on corner exit than all the other drivers.
Yeah, that line's really working for him. I did notice this, that when they were coming down to Canada on the last lap, is the fight in the corner actually cost them about 0.3 of a second. So if they're going to be doing the leapfrog, if they're going to keep fighting like that, they're never going to get back up to the front, and that might be okay. They may be satisfied with just battling for second and letting Vieira go. But you know, if so, we'll have to just wait and see what happens. But yeah, they've got a chance to catch him. Odo did have the fastest lap a couple of laps ago, so you know they do have pace in that group. But the side-by-side battles to the corners is not working.
And it's continuing here. I think Odo, he's actually dropped his way down to P4, and he's slowly dropping back even more as we see the battle between Abrantes and Vocal, with Reeve going off the track through Canada corner. I think there may have been some sort of major mistake for Ryan Odo. We'll have to take a look at replay to see what in the world has caused him to lose a whole lot of time. This was probably the worst commentator strings I may have ever seen from you, Charles. Usually I'm the one doing that. We may see what happened here. Is some little. I think Odo, his connection issues are really biting him, and you can see last time by 2:04.8, so he made some sort of major mistake that lost him quite a lot of time. And Odo still, he's having that connection issue we saw during that practice session and the qualifying session as well, him blinking in and out of existence. I wonder if his connection issues are possibly influencing the fights around him. If you're Sanchez or Harmon and you're seeing your main competitor blink in and out of existence, you may not want to race him as hard. Heading into Canada corner, just overshot it by a country mile. Again, the brakes so tough trying to get these Radical SR10s rolled up into the corner, and Ryan Odo, sadly, he gets bit by that bullet.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to say that it's very unnerving when you're racing around somebody with connection issues. But in that going into Canada corner, looked like he maybe got a touch the grass a bit in the braking zone, and I think that's what he just kind of let off the brakes and just kind of rolled the car through the gravel and kind of reset himself, once he got back onto the track, because it looked like just a small little mistake, trying to take it wide, going into the corner, and just took it a little too wide.
And not ideal for Ryan Odo. Thankfully, he has a chance in the 45-minute feature race we have coming up later on this evening to re-rack it and get his mind screwed on the right way to hopefully maybe challenge for the win with Lucas Vieira. He's still continuing to pull away in this fight, and you can see the other drivers, the movers and shakers we've had. Fernandez is really the biggest loser of this race so far, along with Vogel and Odo. They have lost 2, 3, and 3 spots respectively, along with Vicker, who's out of the race. He's still down in the pits. Was a driver that got hit at the very beginning. You can see Sanchez going incredibly wide on the exit at turn 13. These drivers trying to use every single inch of the racetrack at their disposal. And look at the speeds as well. Dennerine at a 170 mile an hour, many drivers in the 170 brackets. Meanwhile, Lucas Vieira, he's just kind of, I don't know, minding his own business up towards the north end of the field. Harmon, look at him trying to get the move done on Sanchez. They're going to be side by side heading into 1. Harmon moves into P at number 2. Nicely played. I think there may be a small little issue, at least from our end. It looks like Ryan Odo has gone a top speed of 241 miles an hour. I don't think that's accurate. I think an Indy car would top out roughly at that speed, let alone a Radical SR10. That may be the single fastest Radical SR10 in a year covering the Radical Zero on Apex Racing TV. We'll try and get that quick little technical issue fixed. I was like, Vieira and Harmon with that big of a speed differential. Oh my God, it's Ryland Richard with a big moment heading down into turn number 5. He keeps it going in a straight line. Holy hell. Ryland Richard keeps it on the racetrack, and in P number 6, he may lose a spot to Joel Jacklin. But oh my God, Charles, I think if that were one of us, we'd probably end up in the barrier with how sideways he was in that Radical SR10.
Absolutely.
My God.
He just made a major withdrawal from the luck bank. And so I'm not sure that was a great save, though. He was off in the grass on the run down to turn 5, just up under the walkover bridge, looking to the inside. So I'm going to make this move and just said, you know what? I don't care. I'm just going to take it in the grass and manages to collect the car back up, get it slowed down for turn 5, and get back and keep going in the right direction. That was a great save.
If that were me behind the wheel, I would be singing like Christian hymns. I'd be like, oh, sweet merciful life. Just seeing that would be terrifying. And I mean, just from my perspective as a broadcaster, that was terrifying enough as is. Thankfully, he's still keeping it going. And he's still running at P number 6, so you can't really complain about that maneuver, giving a little bit of flair for this race. And I think we're going to be starting the white flag lap this time by, so it's 1 lap to go for Vieira, 1 lap to go for these two as well. Sanchez and Harmon side by side, and Odo is closed up as well, only a second separating this packet, running for those final podium positions. So we'll see them side by side heading into turn number 1. Sanchez pulls off the move. However, this game of leapfrog between these two is probably going to continue. It looked like Harmon was maybe trying to sneak a wheel down the inside heading into turn number 3, and Sanchez runs very wide, and now Harmon is going to be getting him back again on corner exit. But Sanchez, he's going to enjoy that slipstream. He's going to try and go for the move heading into turn number 5, and with these two battling as hard as they can, look at Odo ominously closing in that gap as well. We'll see Odo take that interesting line. He may be able to overtake them on the outside of the corner. You can see Odo now, he's sweeping to the inside line coming out of turn number 5. Harmon, Sanchez, and Odo are putting on a fantastic show at the end of this 15-minute sprint race. Odo with a fantastic recovery drive after that moment heading through the Canada corner. About a 5, I'm trying to think, it was probably about 3 or 4 laps ago when he had that moment. He's re-racked it, he's screwed his head back on, and he has just put on a great show for us. He can still end up in second. You just never know in these Radical SR10 races. They're going to be going through the kink and going down that back straightaway, heading into Canada corner. A few moments time, Ryan Odo looking to try and not have a repeat of what happened earlier. He nearly loses it coming out of the carousel, but Odo, he's going to be enjoying that drift, as is Sanchez. Harmon, meanwhile, he is going to be a sitting duck. They're going to be side by side, maybe heading into Canada corner. Odo closing in a lot. Sanchez trying to get that move done around the outside, and Harmon is going to carry a lot of speed into the corner. Thankfully for his sakes, he keeps it out of the gravel trap. That was incredibly deep on the brakes. Full commitment from the driver of the 617 car. They're going to be very close heading into the final corner, and Sanchez goes for the dive down the inside of the last corner to try and take P2, and they make contact on corner exit. It's going to be a drag race between these three, Sanchez, Harmon, and Odo. They're going to be 3 wide coming right to the line of photo finish at the end of his sprint race, and it's going to be Eric Harmon holding off in P2 and Sanchez in P3. Odo, my God, you got to give the man some props for putting on a brilliant recovery drive, ending up, oh my God, you can see those two, those three, I should say, separated by less than a tenth after 15 minutes of racing action. Man, I gotta give some props to all 3 of those drivers for putting on one hell of a show at the end of this sprint race.
Yeah, that was a great end on this last lap. And you could just see Sanchez was just kind of looking, lining him up, said, you know what, I'm going to take this right here, take it to the inside of the final corner. Gets a little too deep, kind of has to check up a little bit on the exit, gives Odo a chance to get his run going. And I don't know, maybe if Odo stuck behind a little longer, he might have had a better run. But 600ths of a second separating second through fourth. Great result, great end, and a really good race there by those 3 guys.
That sprint race was absolutely hectic. America's National Park of Speed. Talk about America's National Park of excitement. That was intense here at Road America. And I think all the cars have taken the checkered flag by now, so we may take a look at the results from this sprint race at Road America from the Radical Americas Championship. That was a fantastic way to kick things off this evening. And it was Lucas Vieira, dominant, absolutely dominant. He wins 7.3 seconds over himself and Eric Harmon, who ends up in P number 2. Franco Sanchez was the meat in that sandwich coming to the checkered flag. He ends up in 3rd, and Ryan Odo with a brilliant recovery drive. I think if that start-finish line, I should say, was probably about 50 feet farther down the start-finish straightaway, Ryan Odo very well may have ended up this race in P number 2. That's Meyer Dennerine ends up in P number 5. Rylan Richard with that oh crap moment going down the back straightaway into turn number 5. He ends up in 6th. Joel Jacklin is going to finish this race in P7. Andy Vogel in 8th. Bruno Brantes in 9th. And Hunter Reeve will round out your top 10.
Yeah, Cedric Oyon in 11th. Adrian Fernandez in 12th. Charles Krasik in 13th. Luis Perez in 14th. Richard McDougall 15th. And then Tyler Vickery 3 laps down. Had a rough start to his race and never could quite get it settled back in. And we'll look to see if we can get him up out of the bottom here in the next race.
I can see him waiting in the general chat here on Apex Racing TV on the Apex Discord server, but I think we'll leave him to himself, because every single time we've dragged him in here to have a little chat after these races, he's usually ended up crashing at turn number 1. So maybe it was some bad juju for Tyler Vickery. So we'll leave him be for now. Maybe we'll have a chat with him after this feature race that we have coming up. 45 minutes in length, a pit stop to negotiate with as well. And for these drivers' sakes, I hope that lap 1 isn't as chaotic as we saw from the sprint race that we just had. We had a car getting hit up the rear, some drivers locking up and going incredibly deep into turn number 5. Fingers crossed that we see a much cleaner beginning of this feature race. However, I am not holding out breath. What about you, Charles?
No, I'm going to say that, yeah, maybe, and this because we've already done it once, right? So you know what to expect when you go down into turn 5 the next time. To make sure you give yourself some room, so maybe an escape route if necessary. So yeah, I think practice makes perfect. I'm just going to give the drivers a bit of a doubt. So yeah, we've done this once. We know what it feels like with a full field barreling down into 5. So now we'll take it a little bit easier this time. Let the tires get nice and hot, and then we'll do some battling in the next lap.
Oh, you caught me in the middle of taking a sip of my water there, Charles. That was not ideal timing. I think that may have been payback from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. I think I had a question for you right as you were taking a sip of water. So I think we could call it even for today. I nearly choked myself trying to finish things up there. But anyways, we'll get back on track and talk about the race that we're expecting from this feature. We don't have any sort of reverse grids or anything like that. It is just The finishing order from that sprint is going to be the starting grid from this feature that we have coming up in just a few moments' time. And we're in the midst of a warm-up session right now. You could call this the calm before the storm. We have about a minute and a half left to go there. We'll just have to see what kind of strategy these drivers do as well. And one thing that's been a deciding factor in a lot of these Radical Americas races is small little mistakes when it comes to those pit stops. The mistakes on track can be huge, but the mistakes in the pits can be massive as well. Drivers not clicking off the change tire buns or adding in a bit more fuel than they really need. These drivers don't have to change their tires. They're probably worn to about 60% by the time they come down pit road, which, hey, it's not ideal, but the time loss of taking tires in that pit stop is even worse. So it's those tiny little mistakes that have decided races so far this season. And Charles, do you think tonight's going to be any different?
No, and I think it's a lot to do with the fact that this pit road is so long, because it basically is almost the entire front stretch. And so pit entry is a very, very long straightaway uphill. It's pretty straightforward as far as there's no little bends or anything like that, but it tends to catch people out because they end up speeding at pit entry. You just got to be careful where the cones are for your speed zone, and it's been known to catch people out. You get like I said, just too fast on entry, and then that's a 25-second time penalty that gets added to your pit stop. So there's no, if you stop, there's no way to avoid it. You're going to get hammered with it immediately. And in a race like this, you've lost any chance that you might have if you came in with somebody else for, as a draft partner, or things like that. So you're just kind of stuck with what you've got at that point. And it's tough to make up 25 seconds on this track.
And we're going to get the starting grid for this feature race for you right away. And leading them to green, as he did in that sprint race, is going to be Lucas Vieira, the Brazilian, in the 171 car. He's going to be starting this race from the pole. Eric Harmon will join him on the front row. Franco Sanchez in third, and Ryan Odo in fourth. That's Meyer Dennerine in P number 5, Rylan Richard in 6th, Joel Jacklin in 7th, Andy Vogel in P number 8, Bruno Abrantes in P number 9, Hunter Reeve in 10th, Cedric Oyahan in P number 11, Adrian Fernandez in 12th. And then looking through the final 4 starters of this feature race, it is going to be Charles Krasik in 13th, Luis Pires in 14th, Richard McDougall in 15th, and Tyler Vickery in P16, hoping to get through lap 1 clean, unlike what he did in that sprint race. Fingers crossed on his behalf that he actually sees the end of lap number 1. Turn 1's going to be intense. We saw some hard battling there throughout that race. We saw some drivers going side by side at the very beginning. We'll just have to wait and see if they can negotiate that turn clean. I think Ryan Odo is not on the starting grid, so we already have 1 car short. The lights are out and the drivers are on their way, and it's again a very convincing start from Lucas Vieira. He mastered the wheel spin, and he's going to be leading them heading into turn number 1. Meanwhile, right behind, it's a dogfight between Harmon and Sanchez. It looks like they're going to single file out heading into turn number 1. We've got some drivers going side by side a little bit farther in the back. Abrantes was one of them, stuck on the outside. He has had to single file out and may try and go for a move in the not too distant future. You can see some drivers battling very hard. I see Adrian Fernandez nearly going off the track coming out of turn number 3. He is locked steady in a very close fight. Hopefully for his sakes, he doesn't lock up into turn number 5 like he did in that last race. And we've got a hornet's nest of Radical SR10s careening their way into turn number 5. Does anyone get those brakes wrong? Abrantes, a little bit of a lockup farther in the back as well, but all the drivers avoid that runoff area. They don't touch it with a 10-foot pole, and they get away through the first 6 corners of this lap surprisingly clean.
Yeah, it was a good start by everybody. I think, with the exception of Odo, who was disconnected from the server, is back in, but obviously he's going to be, he's going to be most of the better part of a lap down. As we see the 24 locking up a little bit there. That's Vickery. Had a good start, though. He's up 3 positions, so he got a better start than he did last race. So now it's just a matter of just settling in for the next part of this race and trying to get to that pit stop point, and we'll see how it all goes. But, yeah, so far everybody seems to be just running in line and taking their time. So, it's a good start, I think.
That is a kick in the shins for Ryan Odo to disconnect right as the drivers were taking to the starting grid, and some hard battling heading through Canada corner. But Ryan Odo, you gotta feel bad for him. He is always viciously quick in these Radical SR10s. I mean, he put that on full display. Made a mistake running P2 in that sprint race, dropped off by about 2 seconds, and then in the final 4 laps of that race, he clawed his way all the way back and was involved in that 3-wide photo finish at the end of that sprint race. Sadly for him, he is going to be with a massive back foot. He is pretty much entirely out of it, as Charles Krasik is looking to get a move done on Adrian Fernandez. Heading into turn number 1 side by side, Krasik looking to get the move done as they head through turn number 1. He gets that move done fairly convincingly. However, Fernandez is looking to get that switchback move. They're going to be side by side into turn number 3. Fernandez on the inside, Krasik on the outside, and Krasik sweeps his way around to maintain that P10 spot. But Odo, that is such a shame, and my mind harkens back to what happened at Sebring earlier on in this season. He had pretty much the sprint and feature win pretty much entirely in his back pocket. However, he got hit by a falling anvil in the form of a lap car that spun in front of him, the same lap car on both occasions. And sadly for Ryan Odo, what could have been 2 very dominant wins came to naught. And we got some hard battling here again right outside the top 10. This is Krasik and Oyahan, as Fernandez has actually dropped back a little bit. Not sure what in the world happened here. It may have been a lockup. We may be able to find a replay to see what happened to Fernandez. Regardless, he has dropped back, and now Krasik is looking to try and break his way back into the top 10 with Oyahan, the Canadian, running and occupying that final top 10 spot. These drivers, it's one thing that we always see in these Radical SR10 races, whether it be in the America's Championship or the official races on Fridays, they give it absolute hell regardless of what position they're running in. We're seeing Fernandez coming out of turn number 5, and it was a big moment for Krasik, and Adrian Fernandez just had to take avoiding action. If not, he was going to give Charles Krasik a big hip check there. That was a very close call.
That was a very close call, yeah, and it was just Krasik just trying to catch his car. Looked like he was headed in for a slide. He could feel it, feel the rear end coming around, and just basically just hit the brakes. And Fernandez did a great job to avoid it and just not cause a collision. And so we're all still racing, and the leader is now up. He's got a 2.5 lead over Sanchez, and we'll see if Sanchez can make up that gap or if Vieira is just going to be too strong tonight.
Which could definitely be that's definitely not out of the realm of possibilities. Lucas Vieira, he is insanely quick in these races, and with how hard Harman and Sanchez are already battling, he may be able to just pull away from the rest of the field. Harman and Sanchez, they're side by side. Coming out of turn number 3, I think they're going to continue to be side by side. Heading into turn number 5, as Dennerine and Vocal are also battling right behind them as well. So we've got some hard battling all throughout this field, side by side, coming out of turn number 5. And nearly making contact. They did make contact. I believe they're still making contact and being and banging doors. Heading into turn number 6, Vocal and Dennerine incredibly close and battling tooth and nail, as we have a big slide there and an off-track moment for Charles Krasik. Things go from bad to worse for the driver of the 53 car. Had that moment heading through turn number 5 not very long ago, and heading through turn number 6, he has another big sideways snap. The handling on that car is clearly wrong.
Yeah, he's not having a good night. He's struggling. I think he was the points leader in the M class, and just obviously doesn't look like he's got the handling on that car set up properly tonight. He's just kind of struggling through, especially through 5 and 6. It just seems like he's having to deal with lockups quite a bit through there.
And lockups in these Radical SR10s, whether it be front or rear, are pretty much a death sentence. So it's not ideal for him to start off this race. And I think we've had a fairly hectic start, so I think we'll take a look at some replays to see what kind of stuff we've had towards the very beginning of this race. I think the first is involving this fight between Sanchez and Harman. This is going down that back straightaway. Well, the back not so straight straightaway heading into Canada corner. Sanchez sweeping his way around the outside and making contact as well. There was definitely some nudging between those two heading into the corner. I thought Sanchez was just going to pull off a beautiful move, and that was some beautiful, beautiful battling between between those two. However, it wasn't the glorious move that Sanchez was probably hoping to come out of that. He's still running in P2 right now. We'll see how things shake out between those two. We're only 6.5 minutes into this 45-minute race. We still have a whole lot of storylines left to be decided. We've got the pit stops to deal with as well in this hard fight between Reeve and Jacqueline going down that back straightaway, heading into turn number 5. We've got 2x2 as well with Ryland, Richard, and Dennerine going side by side a little bit farther up the road. And look at Brantes, and he's going to be spinning Reeve heading through turn number 5. Brantes, that was, we have a big accident with Fernandez getting hit up the rear. And I'm not sure who was the one that punted him off. I think it may have been Cedric Oyahan that punted Fernandez into a spin. But that incident between Brantes and I believe it was Ryland Rowe. He was getting involved in the fight right in front of him as Cedric Oyahan has gone off the track. So that's coming out of turn number 7. Not ideal for Cedric Oyahan. We're going to have to take a look at some replays to see that, but I think that was pretty much entirely avoidable if you were Brantes.
Yeah, it kind of looked that way, and I'd like to see the replay on it because it looked like there were a couple of things that were happening one after the other, though I'm sure Josh will get us a replay as soon as he's able to. And I was just kind of looking down the order there. Odo is now up to 14th. He's actually caught McDougal and passed him. So he's still on the lead lap, but he's about a half a lap behind or thereabouts. I'm sorry, actually not quite a third of a lap behind, we'll say that, so about 39 seconds. And so he's working his way up, and we'll get the replay here from this previous incident here with Oyan. Coming through turn 6, just couldn't get the car turned, wanted to kind of lock up, able to let that car get by, and then he's off. I'm not sure, wonder if he's got damage, suspension damage or wheel damage on the front. Look like he might be struggling just a little bit there. As we see McDougal here coming through. Yep.
And that car looked like it was handling very, very ill. And McDougal, quick little clip of the grass heading into turn number 3. I think that was just a quick little simple off-track, an interesting interpretation of track limits from Richard McDougal. And we'll try and find a replay of that drama that happened heading into turn number 5 in the not-too-distant future. This may be it of this drama. This is actually Krasik a little bit farther up the road. This may have been a little bit earlier. He may have been one of the cars that overtook the off-track and off-stricken car of Cedric Oyahan. I don't believe he's come into the pits yet, so that's not ideal. And I think, strangely enough, iRacing for some reason did register what happened a little bit farther up the road with Reeve. And oh my God, that was a very close call for Krasik. Nearly had an incident with Reeve coming through that corner. But I just took a look at what happened and when it happened live on the broadcast. I'm trying to break it down based off what I saw back then and what I saw when I took a second view of it. Brantes closed up in that fight between Reeve and Jacqueline, I believe it was, heading into turn number 3. I mean, to get involved and try and be a shoehorn in that fight so very early on, I mean, we haven't even broken into the 10-minute mark of this 45-minute race, so I'm trying to spit my words out here. Just being a pick involved in that fight, especially one of that gravity, it's just struggling to find the words. I'll try and re-rack here and get my brain rewired here and try and describe that again. Brantes getting involved in that fight in the manner that he did heading through turn number 5 was really unnecessary. That's the way I see it personally.
Okay, fair enough. As we're back live here.
Took me a second attempt.
Yeah, no problem. I do that quite frequently, unfortunately. Ryland Richard there running in P6. He's kind of hanging there behind Donarine and Vocal. Just having a pretty easy race right now. Not really pushing the envelope with any of those guys. As we see, I'm just kind of looking down the list. Victory's up to P9, so he's having a much better second race than he did first, up 7 spots. Odo is now up to 13th. He's basically running the leader's pace, and so all these cars that maybe are a little bit off the pace, he's closing those guys down pretty quickly.
can hear the Jaws music very faintly in the background with this fight. Vocal running in P number 4. The gap between himself and Harmon, and that fight between Harmon and Sanchez has actually cooled off a little bit. Those two separated by about 0.4 of a second. Currently, Vogel's main concern at this point is Dennerine and Ryland Richard a little bit farther behind. Ryland Richard, I think, is going to be a force to be reckoned with when it comes to this fight, because we saw in that sprint race with him putting all 4 wheels off into the dirt, being mega sideways, going down that back straightaway through the Marine sweep. Richard, I mean, he just pushes that car to the absolute limit, and if he wants to show any sort of bravery that we saw from that incident during that sprint race where he nearly lost it and hit the wall at a very high rate of speed, if he shows that same level of bravery in this fight between himself, Dennerine, and Vogel, it is going to be a dogfight.
Yeah, absolutely. And so far, I think he's doing a good job. It's just 12 minutes into a 45-minute race. And he's like, you know what? I don't need to be sending it into the grass at this point. I'm happy to just kind of sit here and run some laps and maybe save a little bit of fuel, so make my pit stop shorter. And so that's probably the thought process there for these guys is, you know, we're not. It's not time to battle yet. We'll battle a little bit later. As we see Dennerine kind of take a look to the inside, it's like, you know what? Nope, not quite yet. But Vieira out front, 4.2 seconds. I think he's got the measure of the field so far, and I kind of feel bad for Ryan Odo. Is just at this point is it's like he's still struggling with connection issues, but he's making up just so much time over these guys as Reeves into the pits now. I guess that's our first pitter, so will be the undercut there. It's very and just the 244 there of Dennerine. Said, you know what, too deep into that. I'm just going to kind of reset that. I'll lose the spot, see if I can hook to the back of these guys and keep in their draft if nothing else.
He briefly got the move done on Vogel, but sadly for him, it went quickly wrong as they went into turn number 5. Hunter Reeve is now stopped in the box. He's out and away, running down in 14th. He's going to be exiting out in front of Oyahan, and we've had some sort of incident for Pyrez. I'm not sure if it was a quick little technical issue or a crash that's taken him out of this race. Well, we have our first retirement from the evening, and it looks to be Pyrez in 16th. Not an ideal meeting for him by any way, stretch of the imagination, shape, or form. I am all over the place. My brain is absolutely fried from being on the air for as long as Charles and I have been so far today, and we're gonna maybe try and find the replay of what happened to Pyrus. But nevertheless, I think we'll talk about this fight between Richard Harmon. Actually, no, that's not Harmon. It's Richard Vogel and Dennerine, and it's been fairly. It's been very close between all of these drivers, and it was very, very close between Dennerine and Vogel when they went into turn 5 at the towards the beginning of the last lap. They nearly made contact, and I think it may have actually been a little bit of bumper-to-bumper contact that sent Dennerine off the circuit, that or just a quick little overshoot. Nevertheless, it's a fight between Richard and Vogel now heading into turn number 1. Vogel gets that move done to move his way into P number 4. Nicely played on that fight, and you could see Dennerine actually flashing his headlights a little bit, trying to mess with the minds of the drivers a little bit farther up the road from him. He thinks, hey, I was a part of that fight last time by. You guys should not keep me out of your mind.
Yeah, no, he's got that gap closed back up, so that's a 3-car battle again. I did go back and check as we're looking at Krasik there, trailing behind Adrian Fernandez, and Perez also looked like he had a connection failure as well. So that's why he is no longer on the circuit. At least that's what it looks like from the iRacing timing and scoring. So it looks like we're going to be just down to 15 cars on track. With Hunter Reeve coming in and taking an early pit stop so he could get his damage repaired because he was driving around without the front clip on the car. Oyahan's already had his, and of course Odo had to jump back into the race from a disconnect at the beginning.
So I think at this stage of the race, 15 and a half minutes in, things are really settling into a groove. We're going to take a look at a replay of what happened with Tyler Vickery in the number 24 car heading his way into turn number 6. I think this may have just been a simple off-track excursion for the American. We'll see running a little bit wide. Oh my God, that was not a simple off-track excursion. Very lucky to keep it at the tire barrier and keep it going in a straight line. That wasn't tire barrier, that was concrete on the inside. Concrete is a lot less inviting than a tire barrier, that is for for darn sure. And Tyler Vickery, very lucky to keep it out of any sort of barriers outside of the grass that he mode there. The landscaping crews in iRacing are not going to be very happy with Vickery in that off-track moment he had coming out of turn number 6. And this fight between Krasik and Fernandez is pretty hot. These two separated by about 0.3 of a second, heading their way around the final corner at the end of lap number 9. Oh my god, we've got a very hard fight. This is between Vocal Richard, who's actually Vocal's going wide. He locked it up badly into turn number 1 and nearly clipped Dennerine as he rejoined the racetrack. A big lockup. He smoked the tires heading into turn number 1, and it's allowed Ryland Richard and Dennerine to move their way into P4 and P5 respectively. This fight is definitely not going to be over. They're going to be side by side, possibly heading into turn number 5. Dennerine, he's using that slipstream to full effect. Hopefully he tries to get the braking down pat, unlike the last time he went into this corner side by side with one of his competitors. Dennerine pulls off the move smoothly, a little bit wide there, but not wide enough to clip that gravel and grass on the outside of the corner. Dennerine pulling off a nice move to move into P4.
Yeah, that was a very aggressive block that Vocal made there, and obviously paid for it. Just couldn't get the car slowed up from the inside line, and so basically they just crossed him over and made that move. It was a pretty straightforward run, but as you can see, obviously the draft, and you see Vocal moving to the inside, and so I'm going to try and squeeze, and that further inside of that block there, and just says, you know what, nope, that's not going to work. And so able to get the car checked back up. Of course, lost those 2 positions, and which is what he was trying to prevent. And so he's back to racing again. Vickery, we talked about 6 being a pretty difficult corner for the braking, but also in the exit of that corner, you have to be very careful with those curbs on the outside. They have a tendency to do exactly what you saw Vickery do, which is lose the rear end if you just get back on the throttle a little bit too hard, and you end up pointed at the inside wall, and Vickery did a good job to keep himself out of it.
We just had a quick little flare-up of this fight between Bruno Abrantes in the number 22 car and McDougall. Farther behind, those two were going side by side before they went into turn number 5. They have single-filed out with Abrantes running away from that pack. Meanwhile, this is a pack of Radical SR10s and Ryland Richard sticking it around the outside of Dennerine to move into P number 4. Very nicely played from the American, and Vocal looking to pick up the pieces. He went off the track heading through turn number 1 last time by, and now he's going to try and find any way in the book to move his way back into the top 5. You can look at the fastest laps from all these drivers, and Dennerine very, very fast at a 159.966. So that is very fast. I think the 3rd fastest of all the drivers on the grid so far, and he is trying to use that speed. Oh my god, there's a little bit of contact between Dennerine and Vocal. No lost feelings between those two. They're battling hard and banging doors yet again. Vocal looked like he was trying to force Dennerine to back out of it and stay off the circuit as they came out of turn 5 and into turn number 6. This is a dogfight between these drivers, and hey, we're not even at the 20-minute mark of this race, and they're leaving nothing out there on the racetrack.
Yeah, that was Vocal just basically using a Radical branded shoehorn to fit himself into the inside there, just deep, late on the brakes, and able to just work his way through there. Didn't see any contact on the exit. Looked like there was some contact on entry, but he just forced his way in. He said, I'm taking the inside line, and you're not going to be able to stop me. And he was successfully made that pass, and it didn't come to any further contact.
They are very lucky that battling didn't end up in just 3 Radical SR10s off the track in a cloud of steam. We're following Hunter Reeve in P13. He was one of the drivers involved in that incident between himself and Abrantes, and as things stand currently, they're separated by about 6 seconds on the racetrack. However, in terms of position, they are right next to each other. Abrantes in 12th, Reeve in 13th, right in front of this man, Richard McDougall in 14th. He's currently only have Cedric Oyahan, and now the fight for that the top 5 spots has continued yet again. Vocal, Richard side by side. Vocal actually gets that move done. He may run a little bit wide out of the corner. No, just carried a whole lot of speed compared to Ryland Richard. He's going to be a sitting duck compared to Dennerine. Dennerine actually backs out of it. He doesn't go for that move heading into turn number 3, and I think that is a smart decision, because if you are the sitting duck going down this back straightaway, you are going to be in a whole lot of trouble, and I think he briefly got abducted by a UFO there. Hopefully Dennerine rejoins the racetrack, which he has now. They're going to be side by side, I think, Heading into turn number 5, no Dennerine actually, he didn't go for the move. Maybe that connection actually lost him a little bit of momentum coming out of turn number 3, but regardless, he is still remaining in P6 with Ryland Richard occupying that final top 5 spot for now.
Yeah, I think so. For people who are not familiar with iRacing and connection issues, as you see it, as we're watching these guys, you'll see this one car blink in and out. If they're having connection problems, if it's you that's actually in the car with the connection problem, all the rest of the cars disappear. So if you're thinking I'm going to make a move going down into turn 5, and then all of a sudden all the cars are gone, that was actually a really smart idea. Just back out of that.
Yeah, that would not be ideal, as we see Richard McDougall, another not ideal moment. That's running wide and off the track coming out of that's the final corner of turn number 14, and we're going to take a look at a replay to see what happened. Actually, was that out of turn 14? I think that may have been coming through turn number 8. This is what happened to him coming out of turn number 8, and yeah, run a little bit wide off into the gravel, and then there he goes. So yes, it was coming out of turn number 8. My brain has been melted so far today, and that's well, it looked very similar, I will say, based off the section of the racetrack that they were on. That, or my eyes are just plainly deceiving me. Regardless, touching back on this fight between Vogel, Richard, and Dennerine, they're still very, very close. You can cover all 3 of these cars with a blanket. They're 3 wide nearly heading into turn number 1. Vogel still holding off Dennerine, now acting as the meat in that sandwich, with Ryland Richard looking to try and pick up the pieces whenever he can, and Dennerine again going for the dummy move into turn number 3. Maybe with that, he's just trying to psych out his competitors heading into that very important corner, because if you get that even a millimeter wrong, you are going to have a terrible run going on this back straightaway, and that may have worked like a charm, as Dennerine is going to try and use that slipstream and nearly make contact with Vogel going down that back straightaway, nearly making contact again under braking, as Ryland Richard is looking to get his way back up into P number 5. Not successful in that assault, but right now these drivers are battling like we're coming towards the end of the race. We're barely just past the halfway mark, Charles.
Yeah, no, they're really racing hard, and it's just these little late blocks into the braking zones are just unnerving, and they've done a really good job of just not hitting each other. Just to be fair, I know it was Donnerine made a little juke, like he was going to cross over to the inside. Vogel checked it out. Dennerine looked back to the right. Vogel slid over very, very late. And but once again, no contact made, as we see Dennerine looking again on the outside of Canada. Oh, that's net code contact. That was a good catch by Dennerine.
Save.
Yeah, it was a great save. That definitely looked like net code contact there. So luckily he was able to catch that car. And they're all still 3 together, and so we still got another 20 minutes of this.
And this is the hardest fight that we have on the racetrack, and Vogel pulling in, so he's the first of the drivers running inside the top 5 to make that call to come down pit lane. He is going to be trundling down now. It's going to feel like a wait forever until he finally gets into his pit box. It just feels like eternity running on that pit limiter compared to that full throttle flat out action out there on the racetrack, to now be trundling your way down the pits. Number 34 car, the driver of the 34 car. There's a little bit of damage, I'm sure, and maybe that contact heading into Canada corner could have influenced his decision to come down pit road. Certainly, if I had a big hip check like that going about 170 miles an hour, as these radicals are at the end of the straightaways, you would want to come in too. And we're seeing Ryland Richard and Dennerine still fight hard. This is heading into turn number 5, as Ryan Oda, I believe, has just set the fastest lap of the race. Nicely played from the driver, who's now broken his way back into the top 10. However, he still has a pit stop to negotiate between now and the checkered flag. And this is that main fight between Dennerine and Richard is actually the closest on track, as Vieira, he's still pulling away from Sanchez. Sanchez is pulling away from Harmon as well. And as I say that, Krasik actually loses out on a few spots. I think that may have been down to a mistake, though, rather than a battle on track.
Yeah, I think that you may be right. I was watching the battle behind at the time 4th, 5th, and 6th. I was kind of looking at Fernandez, Vickery, and Krasik. It looks like Krasik's maybe made another mistake. He was in front of Vickery, but it looks like he's about 4 seconds behind again, so maybe missed another braking zone, as Dennerine had another blink there. And so we'll be watching Fernandez and Vickery. You can see this battle going on. Vickery's doing a much better job in this race, up 8 positions. So he's having himself quite a good run as we see Sanchez coming into the pits.
Franco Sanchez, a Peruvian driver who has spent a vast majority of this race in P2, has now come down pit lane along with Dennerine as well. So those two coming into the pits. Ryland Richard is going to be left to pick up the pieces and slide his way into P3. And that's very strange. It says that Richard has been down in the pits only for 0.2 of a second, so maybe there's a little bit of a game of chicken between himself and Dennerine as they came into the pit entry. Maybe one of them just lately back to Avid, and maybe a little bit of rally action for Ryland Richard to remain out there on the racetrack and out of pit lane. Sanchez, he is stopped in his box. He's out and away. 14.4 second stop there, which is the fastest so far in this race compared to Ryan Odo at 1.2. That was, of course, at the very beginning of this race. We'll see how long Dennerine has stopped for. This is a very long stop, an incredibly long stop. 15.3, not ideal. Vocal out and away in 13.8, so Vocal is going to grow that gap to himself and Dennerine. We'll see how things shake out compared to Ryland Richard, but that one close fight that we have on track is looking like it's spread apart now thanks to the pit stops.
Yeah, it looks that way. It's just a matter of now Ryland Richard coming in for his stop and figure out if he's going to come out near Vocal or near Dennerine, and what kind of fight there's going to be amongst those cars after the pit stop's over with, or maybe he comes out, around neither one of them. But my guess is he's going to come out somewhere in the middle. If he splits the group, then that might be a way for them to kind of get back together. So if you're Vocal, then basically you're saying, I don't need to be making a mistake for the remainder of the race. I just need to keep running hard, as we see Vieira making his way into the pits as well.
Ooh, the dominant leader of this race, Lucas Vieira, down pit lane. He's going to be, it looks like he's already trying to find his pit stall. It's not for a while, Lucas. You can just remain in that fast lane and keep the hammer down, trying not to miss his box. That would be a terrible way for things to shake out for Lucas Vieira, who's been dominant in this race ever since we grabbed the green flag 28.5 minutes ago. Harmon has come in along with Ryland Richard and Joel Jacklin, so the final drivers running in the top 4 yet to come down pit lane have now come in as well, along with actually Vickery, who's running in 5th, has not come into the pits yet. However, he is quite a long ways farther back. Ryan Odo hasn't come in as well. Well, technically he has. He started this race from the pits, but he has still not come in for a fuel stop yet. Oh, as I say that, Ryan Odo pulls into pit lane, so the driver of the 15 car trundling down in the back, and I think we may, a little bit farther in the back, there may have been some sort of incident. I think we may be able to take a look at a replay to see what happened there. Ryland Richard out and away. I think all these drivers having some pretty quick stops, it must be said. Vieira has gone out with the lead once again. Vickery is running in P2, Sanchez in 3rd, Harmon in 4th, Dennerine, you can see that gap between Dennerine, Richard, and Vocal. The gaps between those 3 drivers have expanded massively through this pit cycle, and it was just that slow stuff for Dennerine that hurt him the most.
Yeah, just as we see McDougal there coming out of the final corner, I'm going to guess that was the outside curb and just looped the car around. Could not get it stopped before hit the tire barrier on the inside. As we'll look at it again. Yep, just on the outside there. Yeah, I got off in the grass and just too much throttle, and around the car went. So yeah, it's going to be tough for Dennerine to make up that gap. He was faster, I believe, the lap prior. So we'll see if he can make the time up naturally, or if it's going to be Vocal and Richard battling. That's going to allow Dennerine to catch back up, as we see Krasik battling with Hunter Reeve.
And they single file out heading through turn number 6. Krasik occupying that final top 10 spot, and Odo right now running in 9th. So even after that pit stop, Ryan Odo has clawed his way back into the top 10. Very nicely played from the American. He's going to need a miracle if he wants to break his way into the top 5. However, I have seen stranger things. We still have 15 minutes left to go in this race, and if the chaotic sprint race is anything to go off of how much drama can ensue in 15 minutes as Tyler Vickery is pitted from P2, If the sprint race is anything to go off of, Charles, these final 15 minutes of this race could be very dramatic.
Yeah, you definitely looks like there's a couple of really good battles on track. So it'll probably be that way until the end of the race. So we'll see. It's a little close there between Krasik and Reed. Krasik was able to make the move to the inside. Maybe a little bump draft there through the corners, which is not really what you want to do. So I don't know if that's maybe Krasik got squirrely and had to check up and Reed couldn't react in time, or if Reed just had a really good run coming out of Cam's corner and got maybe just a little bit too close, but they're going to keep battling down the front straight.
Ooh, heading into turn number 1, who's going to prevail in this fight? Krasik and Reeves side by side and making contact again, and Krasik has spun around. He is going for a one-way trip into that gravel trap and keeps it out of the barrier, surprisingly so. But Charles Krasik with a very dramatic feature race. He's been involved in probably about 5 incidents so far. It has not been a good feature race if you're Charles Krasik, but that one, I'm not really sure what to make of that fight between himself and Hunter Reeve. That battle gone horribly wrong. I think it may have been 2 cars fighting for the same piece of real estate, and here is the replay of Krasik and Reeve and the incident that they just had. You can see Reeve keeping it fairly straight and true on that inside, actually in the middle line, and it's... I think it's a mix of both. I think Hunter Reeves was being very aggressive, maintaining that mid-track, going down that start-finish straightaway and heading into turn number 1. And I think he may have been slightly veering towards that inside line while Krasik was looking to widen his approach, because, hey, if he was very shallow, if he had a shallow line heading into turn number 1, he probably would have ended up in the same gravel trap anyways. But still, hard racing between those two. No quarter given and no quarter expected either.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. That is kind of what it looked like to me. Just hard racing. Maybe somebody didn't brake as much as somebody else thought. So happens a lot. We see it all the time. I'm not going to attribute any fault to that. Just like 2 guys trying to make the corner and doing what they thought they needed to do, and contact was made. And unfortunately, Krasik was on the bad end of that.
Yeah, just tough stuff between the two of them. One driver who has not had a tough go of things. He's just been driving dominant up towards the front. I'm definitely not saying this, hoping we have a little bit of drama with Lucas Vieira. No, I'm kidding. I can't say something like that. Lucas Vieira, very nice gentleman and a very good Radical SR10 driver as well. Here's Hunter Reeve coming down the pits, I believe, for his 2nd stop in this race. A little bit strange that we see him down the pits yet again. Maybe possibly serving a penalty. We'll see. Yeah, maybe it could be. We'll see if he actually stops in his box. Hunter Reeve, we'll see him start to head his way towards those pit boxes. It doesn't really look like he's turning off into either of them, so Hunter Reeve may have picked up a drive-through penalty with that incident. Yes, he has. So Hunter Reeve being the victim of a drive-through penalty, maybe for that incident. I mean, the way I see it, it is the overtaking car's responsibility to try and get the move done clean, but again, as well, if you're the car that's being overtaken, you need to treat your competitors with a little bit of respect. Now, I didn't really see that between that fight between Hunter Reeve and Krasik heading into turn number 1, so Reeve possibly picking up a penalty for some incident point violations. Either way, Hunter Reeve with a drive-through penalty in the late stages of this race. It drops him down into P14. He is massively on the back foot and can really only catch up to Oyahan with a pretty substantial gap, 14 seconds between himself and Charles Krasik to even make his way up into 12th. So it's pretty much all said and done for if you're Reeve.
Well, you say that, but then Krasik goes wide coming through 7. And so, obviously, it would take a mistake by Krasik for Reeve to be able to catch up. But, it's just going to be Reeve serving his punishment. And if he can make a spot or 2, he'll obviously try and do that, and if not, then he'll have to deal with the repercussions of the drive-through penalty and the incident limit as we get back here to Volkel and Richard, P4 and P5, still stuck together. Looks like Dennerine is actually losing ground to these guys, which is kind of what you expect when you got 2 cars running together. They tend to be a little bit faster than the cars running solo. Especially when they're not battling through the corners. Now, once they start battling through the corners, that may change.
Well, and Krasik has come into the pits as well, so that's a very unusual thing. Maybe he picked up a penalty as well.
Maybe.
We'll see if he stops in his box. This is a second stop as well for Krasik, so we'll keep an eye on him to see if he trundles his way fully down the pits. Right as I was saying that Reeve would probably never be able to re-overtake Krasik, we may see that change, and yeah, there you go. Hunter Reeve is going to blow Krasik's metaphorical doors off. If you're John Krasik, as much as you're running in a pretty much guaranteed P14 with McDougall 2 laps back of our leader, Lucas Vieira, after the race and the meeting that you've had, you'd probably call it quits, at least I would. And Krasik, yeah, serving a drive-through penalty, so that both of them suffering drive-throughs in the late stages of this race. I don't think lap traffic is going to play a role unless Krasik has some sort of major mistake and loses another, like, 15 seconds. He is not going to be a lap traffic, so Lucas Vieira, at this point, he has a 6.5 second lead, and we have less than 10 minutes left to go in this race. So if you're Lucas Vieira, I mean, he's been probably responding to emails all throughout a vast majority of this race as he sets the fastest lap of the race to it, a 1:59.291. Lucas Vieira, as the sun is coming down at Road America, he is driving off into the sunset.
Literally as well as metaphorically. Yeah, he's having a great race. It's just, class of the field tonight. Nice 6.5 second lead over Sanchez. Sanchez is no slouch. He's also running in the 59s. His last lap 59.77. So him. There's only, I think I see 4 cars. Volkel actually did a 59.98 last lap, and then Odo down in P9 did a 59.71. So second fastest lap last time by, but unfortunately the pit start is just going to be the death of him as far as him trying to get up to the top 5 and getting those top 5 points.
Well, we still have a decent ways left to go with this championship. 12 rounds of these drivers to try and contest between all the way back in February when this series started, all the way through to October the 13th when things wrap up at the Nordschleife. So 6 rounds in, Odo, this is going to be a race to forget if you're Ryan Odo. P4 and being involved in that photo finish was fantastic. However, with the way things have shaken out in this feature race, not ideal if you're the American driver of the number 15 car. He may be able to call up another position, as Fernandez is not a very long ways up the road. So we may see Ryan Odo possibly get a little bit racy between now and the end of this. We still have a decent chunk of time left to go. I mean, it's not a stunning amount of time, only about 6.5 minutes, but still enough time if you're Ryan Odo to close that gap and maybe try and eye up a move with Fernandez.
Yeah, I think he can get Fernandez. He might actually could get Vickery as well. He's only about 3.5 seconds back. And obviously he's got really great pace in the car. He's going to get a nice slipstream from Fernandez as he's trying to catch up to him and work his way around. So that's going to give him another probably half second on that lap. So yeah, he's still not outside the realm of possibilities. He can get up to 7th, but yeah, anything beyond that's going to be, way out of unless somebody makes a mistake and has a major incident. He's not going to get anything much beyond that.
So the field is fairly spread out currently. I'm looking through the gap between Vieira and Sanchez is currently about 7 seconds. This is the closest fight by a pretty wide margin. It's Vogel and Richard still separated by barely any air, about 0.3 of a second separating them heading into turn number 3 at the start of lap 20. Still close between these two. Outside of that, it's fairly cut and dry. Vieira still has a 7.2 second lead. Harmon is 10 seconds back of Sanchez and P2, but these two are very, very close. They may go side by side heading into turn number 5. No, they're actually single filing out, so these drivers may be adding a bit more reprieve as we get towards the end of this race. I think they're taking it easier, even though the checkered flag is coming out in about 5 minutes time. They're taking it easier now than they did about 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that there's only 2 cars now as opposed to 3. So I think that the third guy added a multiplier to that battle. But these guys are still going to be battling, and it may be another one of those side-by-side finishes when we get to the end of this race. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it as Odo has made his way by Fernandez. He is now about just a little over 2 seconds behind Vickery, so he's making that gap up as well.
And I think McDougall has come into the pits yet again. And Vickery going wide, heading through turn my God, that was very close. Thankfully for himself, he keeps it going in a straight line. That was not ideal heading through turn number 8. Ryan Odo is now closing in. Vickery is going to be a sitting duck. He has gravel and grass on his tires, and his confidence is a little bit shaken up. We'll see him go through the kink, see if he tries to take it flat. Ran a little bit wide through there, it must be said, and Odo is going to be closing that gap up dramatically. He has a very good shot of finishing this race in P7. Outside of that, it's probably not going to be another position for him unless there's some sort of major drama inside the top 5. And again, running wide is Vickery, and Ryan Odo is going to slot his way into P7 fairly unfought between those two. It's just Vickery was like, hey, I ran wide pretty much twice in the span of about 30 seconds. I'm just going to let you by, Ryan. I mean, he's still viciously fast in these cars, and we're going to see what kind of lap he set this time by. He has been outside of himself, Sanchez, and Vieira. There's really been no one in those sub 2-minute time zone areas outside of maybe Harmon on a very, very good lap with some draft help as well. But Odo sliding his way into 7th as Vickery and Fernandez look like they're going side by side heading into turn number 1. They single filed out before they got there. But this is, it's yeah.
No, I think Fernandez is thinking now I've got a chance to put a little pressure on Vickery and maybe force him into another mistake, and I can get that spot as well. As we see Vickery just runs way deep into that corner and just completely blows turn 5, and so a nice easy pass for Fernandez. Vickery drops down to 9th. Odo is clear, and so now he's got a nice big cushion in front. Is he going to go set some hot laps for the last couple of laps of this race?
Yeah, I think he's going to do that, just have a quick little bit of fun between now and the end of this, which is coming up fairly soon. We're 42.5 minutes into this 45-minute race, so I think we may be on 2 to go this time by Lucas Vieira, eyeing that checkered flag, and he's going to do it yet again, fairly dominant. I will say that gap has actually decreased. It's about 7 seconds. I mean, it's still a massive gap between himself and Sanchez. However, it's gone down a teeny tiny bit, 0.6 of a second on that last lap. I wonder at this point if Lucas Vieira is just taking it easy. Probably could be, maybe, possibly fuel as well. We'll just have to wait and see. And I think we may have some replays of some of the stuff that's been going on throughout this race. And this was Vickery and his off track that ended up costing him that position, with Fernandez right behind heading into turn number 5. Tried to get that move done on Odo and just carried way too much speed. He probably would have ended up in Canada if he didn't have that gravel trap to stop him. That was incredibly quick, way too quick heading into turn 5.
It was way too quick. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that he just realized, yeah, that was a big mistake. And he's, so it looks like he's popped. It's got him shown as out. Have we had another incident with maybe an alien abduction? It kind of looks that way.
Oh no, I think we may be taking a look at an incident. Vickery heading into Canada corner. He ran wide here earlier. He hits the wall and bang, hits the gravel trap, hits the wall. That was a substantial hit. I think he alt-tapped forward before he came to a stop. Right.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's exactly what happened. Is he said, you know what, I've had enough, and that's the end of it for tonight. As we're getting a look now at a replay of Charles Krasick and coming down into
turn 8 and
turn 8 and just a little brush of the wall. Yeah, just a little brush of the wall, and that's the turn 8 is you have to be very careful, and obviously a little too deep going through there. As we're back on Vieira, I think he is taking the white flag.
Yes, he is. 1 lap to go for Lucas Vieira. 7.2 second gap, which I don't think is as big as he ended the sprint race with. It just shows you the dogfight that was forming between Sanchez, Odo, and Harmon. But still, 7.2 seconds, that is pretty substantial.
Yeah, it is. As we're looking now at Harmon coming across the line in third comfortably, 7 seconds over Vocal. And that battle, as you see him in the background there between Vocal and Richard, coming down to the last lap as we kind of thought it was going to. So now let's see what kind of strategy plays out here between these two drivers.
Ooh, this is going to be tense when they head into turn number 5 in just a few moments time. Vocal, he's going to be a sitting duck. Rylan Richard, we saw this during the sprint race. He put 4 wheels off into the dirt and nearly had the biggest crash of his life. He is not going to try and take it easy. He's going to fight like hell to move into P number 4, and you can see trying to do a repeat of that, nearly went into the dirt, trying to get that move done down the inside into turn number 5, and Ryland Richard is going to pull off the move successfully. Nicely played for the driver of the number 69 car to move his way into 4th. They do have some lap traffic of McDougall right in front, so I wonder if he's going to act like a pick, and you can see Ryland Richard desperately flashing his headlights. I don't think Ryland Richard should be upset about Richard McDougall right in front of him. Of course, the dirty air is not going to help him, and they're nearly making contact heading through turn number 8. Ryland Richard desperate to get McDougall out of the way as McDougall actually goes off the track heading through the carousel. That was nearly disastrous for both of those drivers heading through turn number 8, but I was just going to say that McDougall acting as a pick in that and acting as a hole punching a hole in the air in front of Ryland Richard, it would have helped him going down this back straightaway at the end of it. You can see he's a sitting duck. Vocal may try and go for the move into Canada corner for the final time. They're going to be side by side heading through the turn. Ryland Richards going to hold off that inside line. Lucas Vieira's won it in dominant fashion. He is going to take another dominant win from the season and hope to extend that gap, his massive gap in that championship. Well, yeah, massive gap in this race, not a massive gap in the championship. He'll try and make that a massive gap. And oh my God, there's a massive moment, a big hit for Andy Vocal coming out of that final turn. That was a big one, and oh my God, he only got T-boned by McDougall. Andy Vocal, I think he's still going to end up in the top 5. Actually, no, it's going to be close between himself and Dennerine. It's going to be a photo finish between those two. Dennerine swipes by at the dying moments of this race to end up in P5. Oh man, that was a very, very tough moment if you're Andy Vocal. Running a P5, he was very desperate towards the end of that and tried to carry as much speed as he possibly could coming out of that final corner, and sadly for him, he misjudged it terribly and ended up in the barrier with a pretty substantial hit as well. His race team is not going to be very happy. The iRacing mechanics are going to have to drink a whole lot of Red Bull to try and get that repaired as quickly as they can. But thankfully for his sakes, he does have another race to deal with. That is the final race from this evening. It's Lucas Vieira pulling off the double in dominating fashion.
Yeah, great race. Great job by Lucas Vieira. Just as you said, dominant fashion. Kind of feel bad for Vocal. It was a good battle between him and Richard. And just, he got a little wide coming out of the final corner and just tried to keep his foot in it. I mean, you know, you got to applaud the guy for just saying, I've got to go as hard as I can, and just got over there. And apparently there's some pretty substantial bumps over on that side of the track, or that side of the out of the grass. As we see him here, just taking it in deep. Tries to get back on throttle and just no can do and just no control out there. And that's pretty much the end of that. Comes back on. McDougall has to make the dive around, and Dennerine is able to track him down in the dying meters of this race to get that position. A Vocal finishing 6th, Dennerine finishing 5th, and I'm sure Vocal's like, yeah, you know, 4th, 6th, that's fine. It was a good run. Gave it our all, and just came up a little bit short, but still a really good battle between those 3 cars, pretty much for, you know, the entire race.
I think we're going to take a look at the results from this feature, and it was a very spread out field when they took the checkered flag. Lucas Vieira ended up winning it by 8.3 seconds over Franco Sanchez in 2nd. Eric Harmon is going to round out your podium in 3rd, 18 seconds back of our leader, Lucas Vieira. Ryland Richard ends up this race in 4th. Mayor Dennerine ends up in 5th, Andy Vocal in 6th, Ryan Odo with a fantastic recovery drive ends up in P7, Adrian Fernandez in 8th, Joel Jacqueline in 9th, Hunter Reeve will round out your top 10 in 10th.
Yeah, Bruno Abrantes in 11th, Charles Krasik in 12th, Cedric Oyon in 13th, Tyler Vickery 14th, Richard McDougall 15th, Louis Priss in 16th with a disconnect earlier in the race. And just to go back, Odo basically, I think, came out 38 seconds, 39 seconds behind the race leader, and worked his way through the field and only lost about 8 seconds over the course of the race. So great drive by Odo.
I think we got some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area to have a chat with us. Rylan Odo is one of them, but I think I'll save that for you, Charles, after you talk to us through that race that he had. We'll have a quick little chat with Adrian Fernandez, who had a very dramatic race meeting here this evening. Adrian, thank you for joining us here in the commentary booth. It was an interesting race here at Road America, to say for sure, so how was it out there?
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
sorry.
Yep. There we go. I think you're good now.
All right, sorry about that. Anyways, yeah, it was a pretty interesting race. I didn't really get this much practice this week, and but I assumed that Road America was one of my good tracks, but the other drivers brought their A game this week, so it's about what I expected.
And you mentioned a very good point there, that being practice, and just these Radical SR10s, from my experience driving them for sure, and there's a very good reason why I'm in the commentary booth instead of behind the wheel. I'm not a great driver, but for you guys, even for some of the best Radical drivers, it's so important getting practice in these cars for these races. So would you like to talk to viewers through the importance of just having a little bit of added seat time before these races?
Yeah, having a little bit of added seat time. These cars, they're a little tricky to drive sometimes if you push them over the limit. But with that added seat time, you can kind of find where the limit is and make sure you try to stay like right on the line of within the limit and out of the limit. Because if not, you'll be losing precious time if you're not riding that fine line.
It's a razor thin margin regardless of what track these cars race at, and Road America may be a little bit forgiving just considering there's not a whole lot of corners on this racetrack, only 14 in total spread across 4 miles. So was it really just like hanging on through the corners just to have that fantastic run going down that start finish straight away, or were the corners were they surprisingly important when it came to having a good result here?
The corners are definitely important, because if you're not that great in the corners, you'll definitely lose the draft. You'll end up like more than 1 second behind the car in front, and you'll lose the draft on the straights, which is mainly what you use to overtake.
Alrighty, well, Adrian, thank you for joining us here in the commentary booth. We've got Alton Park, I believe, coming up in a couple of weeks' time. That'll be the next round of the championship. So what are your thoughts heading into that race in a few weeks' time?
I haven't really driven Alton Park that much ever since iRacing came out with it, and yeah, I'm hoping that I could do well. I'll definitely be getting some more practice. Just like last week in Barber, that's a track that I had never driven before. I bought it and raced it the whole week, and by the time of the race, I was good enough where I could secure second in AM class.
Well, hopefully you get a bit more seat time before that race in a few weeks' time. Adrian Fernandez, thank you for joining us here in the commentary booth. Is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Thanks to all my Instagram followers for watching the race, and all my friends for also watching the race. And thanks for everyone who knows me that's been supportive of me. That's about it.
Thank you.
Alrighty, there you go, Adrian. Well done on keeping it on the racetrack and ending up in the top 10. Hope to see you next time out at Alton Park. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And that was Adrian Fernandez, ends up this race in the top 10. And Charles, who do you like to have a chat with next?
Well, I will talk to Ryan Odo. I'll save Lucas for you, and so we'll talk with Ryan. I will talk to him a little bit. So we'll get Ryan in here. Ryan, P7 in the feature race after a really good battle in the sprint earlier with Sanchez and Harmon. It looked like you were having some internet struggles there tonight, and it kind of put you on the back foot there for that feature race.
Yeah, it was a bummer because I was really excited to battle with Harmon and Sanchez in the second race, and I was even planning with Sanchez for a way to maybe even try and stick with Lucas Vieira because he's so insanely fast that maybe doing what we used to do at Monza, where it was that long straight and you'd switch back and forth. We were going to try that, see if it would allow us to keep up with Vieira, who's insanely fast. But I didn't get to because what I had tried to do was because I noticed my internet connection wasn't as great and I was blinking out every once in a while, so I tried to connect to the router to get better connection, but it completely didn't allow me to connect to the server whatsoever. So it dropped me and I had to get back in. By the time I got back in, the race was already 30 seconds underway.
Yeah, I was just telling them that as we were going, finishing up the race, that I think I saw you came out about 38 or 39 seconds behind the leaders when you left the pit, but you only lost about 7 or 8 seconds during the course of the race, and that's fighting your way through traffic. So you had really good pace, and it's just a shame that that you couldn't show it.
Maybe I'll be able to show it next race.
So your thoughts on the next race at Alton Park?
I love that
chicanes. Track. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a really good track. Obviously it's a much tighter track than what you had to deal with tonight. So you think your chances are pretty good there?
Yeah, I think my chances are extremely good there, especially since when I returned to the Radicals, because I had disappeared from the Radicals for a little bit and came back because I wanted to prepare for the series. When I came back, Outland Park with no chicanes was the first track I went back to, and I remember loving that track. I love that track with all the high-speed corners, the long corners that require trail braking, everything. I think it just suits me, so I think I'll have a good chance at that track.
Well, we'll definitely be looking out for it. Ryan, I'll let you go ahead and give any thanks or shout-outs that you want to give tonight.
I'd like to give a thanks to everyone who runs this race, Sanchez and Diego, and then I'd also like to give a thank you to all the drivers. They put up great races and are very clean drivers that I can trust more than I can ever trust people and officials, and also everyone watching this race, supporting us racing, and you guys for announcing for our race and making it so much more entertaining for all of the fans, because I remember when I listen to you guys commentate, it does not matter what series you're commentating for, I always have fun listening to you guys.
Wow. Thanks, Ryan. We appreciate that. And congratulations on your P7.
Thank you.
All right.
That was Ryan Oda with some very kind words, and I think we'll bring in our race winner, dominant in both of these races, Lucas Vieira. Lucas, absolutely dominant from start to finish. I'm sure from your perspective behind the wheel, it was a little bit more it was a little bit more tricky than just being as cut and dry as it seemed like from our perspective in the commentary booth. So talk us through both the sprint and feature here at Road America.
Hey Ron, hey guys. It's a little bit much harder than you look when you're driving, and I can say that I practiced a lot for this week. I was trying to get away in front on the championship. I think that I managed to do it because we were super tight on the championship. And the key for me was the start. I have a really good start here in both races, and I managed to push on the first laps. Just managed to save tires for the end of the race, and it ended well on the end.
And you mentioned there the starts in both the sprint and the feature. You pulled a pretty big gap heading into turn number 1 just based off the high quality start that you had. So would you like to talk the viewers through the challenges of managing the wheel spin in these cars?
Sure, yeah, it's really tricky. Since day one that we launched this car, of course, back then it was different physics and iRacing correctly then. But now it's just you have to manage to don't go with full throttle on the start. You have to lift a little bit. Otherwise, if you go full throttle with clutch, you have a wheel spin. So what I realized that if I don't go full throttle, I go like 80% of throttle and 43% or 39% of clutch. And it's the key, just release the clutch. And when the tire hooks on the floor, you release the clutch and you're good to go. And boom, it's a perfect start.
Well, that's a pretty good instructional guide on how to have a fantastic start in these Radical SR10s. You may have maybe next time try and keep your cards in the poker game a little bit closer to your chest so you don't reveal them out for your competitors. But we're going to be heading to Alton Park in a few weeks' time. That's going to be a pretty good race in the UK. So how do you fancy your chances there? Yeah,
it was qualifying will be pretty much, I think, 80% of the race because it's a really tough track to overtake there. I'm not sure if anyone who's behind will be able to overtake unless they undercut or do some incredible pit stop there. So I think qualify will define the race. Pretty much entirely the race will be qualify.
Well, I will say I've seen some very intense Radical SR10 races in the official broadcast I used to do here on Apex Racing TV, so maybe we'll just have to wait and see how that converts with this series in a few weeks' time. Lucas Vieira, congratulations on both the victories here this evening. Is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Sure. For everyone who's watching, for you guys for being especially super late on time zone, and for my wife to let me drive also, he's watching, and he say that you guys do a really good job in interviews, so in the broadcast. So congratulations from my wife for you guys.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Lucas, and I'll tell you what, happy wife, happy life. That's all I'll say on that. Lucas, congratulations on the double victory here this evening. Excited to see you back out on track at Alton Park in a few weeks' time. Thank you for joining us, man.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
And that was our race winner in both the sprint and the feature, Lucas Vieira. And I think we have Rylan Richard, who probably had the most exciting race of anyone. Charles, would you like to have a chat with him?
Absolutely. Let's talk with Rylan. Rylan, congratulations on your P4. You've made some good friends out there between Mayor Dennerine and Andy Vocal. You guys were pretty much lockstep there for the races. So talk about that battle that you guys had.
Yeah, I think the name of the game there with them was patience, and I have the utmost respect for them because they were respectful. It was hard racing. And after the pit stop, when Mayor kind of fell back, my plan was to just kind of sit behind Andy and be patient and wait and go for it on the last lap. I wasn't expecting that lap traffic to be a factor, but it's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, it was a little bit close there. And then I think in the was it the first race where you were basically four wheels in the grass going into turn 5 or coming down the straightaway to turn 5? Was that you, or am I misremembering it from like?
You nailed it. Yeah, that was a Code Brown moment, and that was not on anything that Mayor did. I didn't notice that the track kind of closes in there, and I thought it would open up, and there was just grass immediately, which was terrifying. But
yeah, it definitely looked like a scary moment for us as well. But the great save to manage to keep the car at least back to a point where you can get under control in the back on the gray stuff and get it slowed up for turn 5. So yeah, it was very entertaining to watch you guys during the course of the races, and you put on a really good show. You got lots and lots of screen time, so you can go back and give it a look. And you had some really good battles there during the race.
I appreciate it, and appreciate what you guys do as well. Thanks for all the support and taking the time.
Yeah, is there anybody else you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, just shout out again, Mayor and Andy. That was a blast. I'm exhausted, and it was a lot of fun racing with you guys. So I'll see you next week or in a couple weeks.
Yeah, a couple weeks at Alton Park. You like your chances there?
I think I'll need to do some practice for Alton Parks.
There you go. All right, fair enough. All right, Rylan Richard, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Charles. Bye.
And that was Rylan Richard, who probably had the most intense evening of anyone here from the Radical Americas Championship Round 6 at Road America. And Charles, we talked to all the drivers that joined us to have a quick little chat before we wrap things up. I'll ask you this as well. Alton, it's going to be intense. It's pretty much a polar opposite track to what we had here at Road America tonight. So what do you think that race is going to be like in a few weeks' time?
I mean, I kind of agree with Lucas. It is a very, very tough track to pass, but there are a couple places that you're going to see moves that are at least attempted. Coming out of the final corner, it's a very, very tricky corner to get right. Lots of people end up taking it just too wide through there. So you could get a good run down the front straight and take it into turn 1. And then once you get past the island, another kink and into shell oil. There's a big heavy braking zone with a very heavily cambered corner. You'll see lots of at least pass attempts there. Now, whether we'll get any passes or not remains to be seen, but there'll be lots of passes attempted into that corner. But it's a fun track. It's one of those tracks. It's very much like a Barber, but it's an older track, British track. some good elevation changes, very tight corners, but some good runoff, and you can run it out on the AstroTurf a little bit, but it's going to make for some really good racing.
We have got a fantastic schedule of races to look forward to in the second half of this season. We have Alton Park in 3 weeks' time. That'll be on June the 23rd here on Apex Racing TV. And then a few weeks after that, we'll be heading off to the California coast at Laguna Seca. That's going to be intense as well. Phillip Island on August the 18th. Brands Hatch on September the 8th. Sonoma Raceway on the Cup layout on September the 29th. And then we're going to round things off on Sunday, October the 13th at the Norderschleife. Hopefully the fog has gone away by the time we visit that race in a couple of months' time. But I think for this broadcast from tonight from the Radical Sim Racing America's Championship here at Road America, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Bichelle joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie doing a great job working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and I'll see you all again when the series returns in 3 weeks' time.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.